Hello, Nut Nation. Ha 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 ha. I'm so funny, but I'm sure nobody cared. It was just a stupid joke anyway. Wait, what? What? No. No. How do you like this? No, there's no way. Oh my god. Oh my god. They actually like it. What have I done? What have I created? Isn't that right, dog? You're so cute. Okay, so while I reflect on my actions, I just want to quickly talk about Aventurine, Luocha, and Xuan. Since I'm sure a lot of you might be wondering which unit is the best sustained for you to pull, I've received a lot of these questions and today we're going to answer it in this video. Let's first start talking about Luocha. So this is a very interesting one because at the time when he was released, he was touted as the savior of all players. Like there was a lot of discussion about, oh my god, future proof must pull unit. Future proof in the sense that he has a cleanse on his ult, which strips buff. And still to this day, I think it's the only skill alongside Pela's E that strips buff off enemies. And Luocha's does it in an AoE fashion. His heals were super strong too, that really reliably kept your team topped off. So I think everyone can agree that he was a very strong unit. I pulled him and he was super comfortable to use. Even to this day, he is comfortable. But I think a lot of the discussion around why he's quote unquote fallen off is because of the newer units that released that people argue offer more than him. This is so much of a community sentiment that even Braxophone made a video on this whole topic, and this is what Braxophone had to say about Luocha.
The amount of healing that he does is absolutely insane. I would definitely put him above Lynx. I would definitely put him above Gallagher. In fact, I think that he's like a bit of an upgraded Gallagher. But would I put him as high as Huohuo, Aventurine, and Xuan? I mean, all of these limited 5-star sustained characters are insane, right? I think Luocha is a character that you play for comfort. I am going to put him up in the A tier because I really do think he is an insanely good unit, and I still think he's very much worth pulling.
And this is what EOD Gamer has to say about Luocha versus Aventurine in his video.
I think if you are a person that likes Blade, very clear, my choice is simple. I'll pick Luocha. Between the two of them, if I don't have either, I don't have Blade, I will be more inclined to pick Aventurine up rather than Luocha, because for cleanse, you can find it easily in a lot of other characters, and they are generally quite skill point positive also. Luocha just have it all in one convenient package. But I think for the verticals, the benefit he gives in a long time, Aventurine does sound like a bit more logical.
Very interesting points there. So yes, I think the main selling point when he first released was his skill point positiveness. And for those of you who don't understand what skill point positive is, really briefly, it's essentially the net positive or negative amount of skill points each character generates. If you're using someone like Acheron that wants to spam their skill every time they go, then she is quite skill point negative because she always consumes skill points. Whereas someone like Luocha, who can just get by with only using his basic attack, he's skill point positive because he's generating skill points for your team. The great thing about Luocha is that he really doesn't require any brains to play. He's literally like auto-battling for you, low-key, because times where you would manually want to heal your characters, he does it for you. That's his talent. When an ally drops below 50% HP, he automatically uses his skill on them, which heals a bunch and gives him one of his stacks. When he ults as well, he gains one of his stacks, and at 2 stacks, he generates this field, and whenever any ally hits the enemies, your whole team generates health back. So you're always topped up, which is amazing for Abundance Path in Simulated Universe. There's one of the blessings that reduces your damage taken by 36% if you're full health. Although when the enemies got harder in the game and enemies hit harder, when he was released, the big swarm bug that literally splats on you wasn't around yet. So it wasn't as much of a problem then. But the thing with having your characters at full health, it helps prevent them from getting one shot, but not entirely. You still need to build a bit of health and a bit of HP on your supports. And even then, at higher difficulties of Golden Gears or Swarm Disaster, for example, they still can get consistently one shot, or even in MOC if they aren't built as well. So yes, as long as you don't die, Luocha can keep you really healthy and basically prevent you from ever dying from small damage. Whenever enemies do big chunks of damage that can burn through your whole health bar, that is where Luocha feels a bit weaker in comparison to the other units that we'll talk about later. I also want to mention, going back to the skill point thing real quick, that it was really good at the time because we didn't have supports like Sparkle or Hanya that literally gives your team skill points. So in teams like Imbibitor Lunay's team, where he's so skill point hungry and there weren't supports like Hanya and Sparkle around, you can imagine kind of how strong he would feel in that scenario. One more thing before I move on, this isn't really talked about too much, but I would like to bring your attention to Luocha's ultimate and just sustain units ultimate in general that can deplete toughness from the enemy. So when Luocha ults, he deals like 60 toughness break to the enemy in an AoE fashion, and every time he basic attacks as well, he deals 30 toughness break to an enemy of the imaginary element. This might not seem relevant, but it is something to consider, especially if you're fighting imaginary weak enemies. For example, if you're using him in the Imbibitor Lunay team, he can really help with that toughness breaking and get the enemy depleted a bit sooner, which results in your characters doing more damage to that enemy sooner as well. If having Luocha on your team results in the enemy being broken right before your Imbibitor Lunay does his big 3 skill point enhanced basic attack, that can actually result in a decent amount of DPS increase, and it's just comfortable overall to break enemies and just have them not move. Some sustain units break and some sustain units don't. This is not super important, but I would like to bring it up just so that we can elaborate on it as a talking point later on. Now moving on to Xuan, everyone's favorite S+ tier sustain unit. Whenever there's any discussion about must-pull units in the game, although there really isn't a must-pull unit, whenever there's that sort of discussion, Xuan is always there. She's in reputable tier lists like the Pride Ones one. Most YouTuber tier lists would have Xuan on S+, and if she's not on S+ tier, the comments would go crazy. She's even on Watch Mojo's, I think, top 3 unit. Insane! Top 3 Watch Mojo unit, I think. Do I think it's justified though? Is Xuan deserving of all the hype? Well, yeah. When she first came out, she was the reason I was finally able to very comfortably 36-star MOC. Well, 30-star at the time. Her main selling points are the damage reduction across your team just for existing, that's part of her talent, and the fact that she absorbs the damage taken by your team, so basically even further damage reduction, and how she basically never dies as well. Every time she is below 50% HP, she basically heals back to full like nothing ever happened. And the cherry on top, and this is what a lot of people focus on why this new breed of sustain units, almost pseudo harmony, are better than Luocha. It is because she provides, at talent level 10, 12% crit rate unconditionally as long as her field is up, which it will always be if you play her correctly, to your team. 12% crit rate to everyone unconditionally, which must feel amazing and really comfortable for everyone at all different investment levels. At higher investment levels, if you have 80% plus crit rate on your characters already, this basically makes it 92%, almost 100% crit rate, and that could really help with consistency and just feel good factor. If you're someone who's just starting on early in the game, you have a few crit rate rolls maybe, and you're at like 20, 30 crit rate, going from 30 crit rate to 42 crit rate is actually very noticeable as well, and can really help start to get your DPS rolling in terms of crits, and building your character becomes much easier with consistency. Sure, you might not hit as hard because she doesn't provide any crit damage buffs, although she does with her E1, which is also pretty cool. At base E0, she doesn't provide crit damage buffs. However, you need to crit in the first place to benefit from crit damage, so crit rate is honestly probably the better stat to get for everyone in general, seeing as how you start off each character with 5% crit rate and 50% crit damage already at base. So essentially what this means is your team never dies and your team has a easier time killing the enemy, which sounds amazing, and it really is. I'm sure you heard all the good things about Fu Xuan. I don't need to be a salesman for her much. I personally have a E1 S1 Fu Xuan that is really well built, if I do say so myself, and I love her. I love her. However, I'd like to point out some of the scenarios where my Fu Xuan actually dies, and where Fu Xuan isn't actually enough to sustain the team. And that's in Swarm Disaster and Golden Gears. Okay, sure, you might say skill issue, just play better, pick better blessings, team build better. But as someone who felt so comfortable just running Fu Xuan in any team, even auto-battling, doing whatever, even in the hardest content like Memory of Chaos, and never even think that dying is a possibility, when Swarm Disaster first came out and I brought Fu Xuan in, I thought like, yo, imagine, like, there's no way that this is hard enough that Fu Xuan would even get close to dying, let alone die. And then I met the bug. And yeah, if you just play normally and you don't really think too much about blessings and stuff like that, Fu Xuan solo sustain in high level of Gold and Gears and high level of Swarm Disaster may be a bit rough. The thing is, she absorbs all the damage that your team takes into her. And usually that's fine because even with a big AoE attack where all your team members get hit and damaged, Fu Xuan has enough HP and defense to soak it all up, gain all her health back, and just chill. However, when you're facing really hard hits and multiple waves of them, especially if you don't have enough damage to kill the enemies before they can attack you, in Swarm Disaster for example, with their high health bars and their high damage, it is possible that Fu Xuan struggles keeping up. Do keep in mind that in these scenarios, she dies to big AoE attacks because all damage is redirected into her. So usually your family. I play this game so much that these characters are my family now. I need to go touch grass, man. Where your team members get hit, they usually survive. So yeah, your team members usually survive. It's just Fu Xuan that dies, which means eventually your team members will also die because they don't have a sustain unit. However, if this is towards the end and it's only one big attack and your Fu Xuan dies, if your other characters have enough damage to take out the enemy before they can act again, then... But that's rare scenarios. I think you can almost never go wrong with Fu Xuan. And even in Swarm and Gold and Gears, you can just play your team better or team build around it, pick blessings that would synergize better with her and stuff like that to kind of prevent it. This is not some sort of big problem because out of all these sustains, Fu Xuan is probably still one of the best sustains to bring into those game modes. It's just the nature of those game modes being really hard. But I think the main selling point now, for me at least, as an end game player, is the fact that she's quantum. And what does that mean? That means she fits into mono quantum teams. She's basically the best mono quantum sustain just purely because of the fact that she's a quantum unit. And if you're really looking for a quantum sustain, honestly, you could even go for Lynx from your mono quantum team. And in those scenarios, Lynx might be even better than some of the other 5 stars just because of how in mono quantum teams you want all your units to be quantum, so Silverwolf always applies quantum weakness to the enemy. That's how it works in case you were not aware. In those scenarios, running a Lynx might actually be better. So the element itself, the fact that she's quantum, I think is a big deal, especially if you want to go in that direction. However, if you are not trying to go in that direction, that doesn't matter as much. Just know that if you're someone who's playing mono quantum, she's probably the best sustain that we have right now and probably the best sustain for that team for a while now. Although yes, Lynx is free, and if you're surviving good with Lynx, it's up to you if you think Fu Xuan is a worth upgrade to your account rather than spending those jade on other things. It's all about opportunity costs, right? At the end of the day. Now, finally, let's move on to Aventurine. Yo! No way. Who is this? Wait, no. Yo, what's up, guys? No. Wait, is this real? Hello, welcome everyone. This is actually crazy. Don't tell him about possible ship discussions, I beg you. Oh, he knows rat urine. You know, okay, I came up with a new one. Do you guys want to hear it? Weld is here with us in Panacony as well, right? He's kind of an important character. So I thought Welt and Weirun. That's the ship name. Weirun. I mean, if you're gonna urine, may as well urine together, am I right? Okay. So if you're not aware, his kit is essentially like a Japard, but with more stuff on it. His E, his skill, gives a big shield to your whole team, kind of like Japard's shield, and I think it's actually stronger than Japard's shield because you can stack it on top of each other. Whenever he enters battle as well, it's automatically applied to your team, so you don't even have to use E the first time. And it's not even a technique like Fu Xuan's. You don't even have to use his technique to get his shield automatically in battle, so he might be very comfy for that reason. When you're in battle, you can use E to fortify it, and whenever he triggers a follow-up attack, which we'll get more into later, he also generates some shield for your team. His ult is pretty simple. It targets a single enemy, does a bit of damage, and applies a debuff to that single target enemy. And with that debuff, they take increased crit damage. Now, the interesting part of his kit is his follow-up attack mechanic. So whenever an ally gets hit by an enemy and the ally has a shield created by Aventurine on them, he gains 1 stack. This is something that they don't say in the talent description in-game as well, in the skill description. It is the fact that whenever an ally triggers follow-up attacks, as you can see from this footage here, Aventurine gains 1 stack of his talent. Whenever he gets 7 stacks, he unleashes a follow-up attack that deals damage to the enemy and depletes some toughness. So this all suggests that he will work especially well with follow-up attack characters and sort of be their premier sustain unit, because Japard is already good enough to sustain, and this looks like Japard but easier to execute with stronger multipliers and stuff like that. So I can't imagine him being not enough to solo sustain your team. Since we're talking about Japard, I'd like to get into the reason why a lot of people actually rank Japard quite highly and actually still use Japard in Swarm Disaster and Golden Gears, or even harder content like MOC and stuff if their characters are squishy, in comparison to units like Luocha or even Fu Xuan in some cases, right? And that's because shield increases your effective max HP. For example, in a Luocha team, your character has 3k HP, for example, and sure, if you take damage, Luocha heals you back up, but your max is still 3k HP. If an enemy does a single attack that is higher than 3k worth of your HP, you instantly die. So even though Luocha is amazing at keeping you topped off, he doesn't prevent those one-shots. Having a shield is increased effective max HP because it literally increases the amount of damage you can take in a single shot, or even multiple shots. And so against those big monsters in Swarm Disaster and Golden Gears, Japard is still really used, and for that reason, I think Aventurine will be very used as well. Let's look at his kit for one more second and just kind of consider what Hoyo is trying to say here almost. He synergizes really well with follow-up attacks because it helps him generate his shield, and his ult lands a single target debuff. Looking at the limited 5-star units that are centered around follow-up attacks right now, we have Topaz and Dr. Ratio. Both are follow-up attack centric and both are Hunt, which is single target by nature. It almost seems like he's tailor-made for that kind of playstyle, doing big damage to a single enemy one at a time. And this is what I want to talk about now. These are archetypes. Hoyo is really taking this game in a direction that's more about pairing units in the right teams. There seems to be a clear-cut, quote-unquote, best unit, best sustain unit especially, for each team archetype. This is not to say that other units cannot work, but for example, Huohuo just provides so much value in a Kafka DOT team than, for example, someone like Fu Xuan. First of all, the DOT characters don't really benefit from the crit rate from Fu Xuan, and if surviving is what you want, Huohuo does that plentifully. The selling point of Huohuo in that team is that she provides a lot of attack percent and energy generation for the entire team, which DOT characters love. And we talked about Fu Xuan just now, and I think her scenario where she stands out the most in is in the mono quantum teams where she is almost irreplaceable. So with Aventurine, I think this is going to be the case too. I think he'll be usable anywhere. He'll be great for just keeping your team alive, which all of these units do, by the way. Keeping your team alive is, at this point, just an expected thing for all these 5-star sustain units. They all can solo sustain your team. However, Aventurine will shine especially in follow-up attack-centric teams. So if you're a Doctor Ratio player, if you're a Clara or Topaz player, he might provide extra value for you. He's especially good in single target focus hunt teams like Topaz Ratio teams because his follow-up attack is AoE in nature, so it might actually make things like Pure Fiction easier because sure, his follow-up attacks might not do the most insane damage, it's just there for more of quality of life, but if you have enough damage on him, he might be able to clear these lower health trash mobs in Pure Fiction and stuff like that, so your hunt units can focus on the big boss and will help cycle through Pure Fiction faster. I see that being a thing and something you can consider. He might actually be a pretty decent quality of life for your follow-up attack teams because of that. Even in Memory of Chaos and other game modes too, I think this is a pretty nice addition. So with that said, I think now we can start to understand a bit more why people are saying Luocha is not as good. I don't think a lot of this is hate or people just want to talk about power creep and they just want to hate on characters. I think, yeah, sure, if you look at it from this perspective, Luocha ticks all the boxes. He's probably one of the most comfy sustains because you can literally not do anything. He literally heals for you. You don't even need to press your skill like you have to on Fu Xuan and stuff like that. He literally plays the game for you. However, he doesn't do much on top of that. He doesn't have a specific archetype that he fits in. Before you might say, sure, he's the best sustain in Imbibitor Lunae teams when Imbibitor Lunae first came out, maybe because he doesn't need to consume skill points and he can be built on a lot of speed to generate skill points for that team to make it work. However, now with the introduction of units like Sparkle, his place in that is kind of not as necessary anymore as well. And apart from that, he doesn't really have a specific team that he's the best in, but he's still an amazingly strong general healer. Just maybe not the most min-max character for the end game. And I've heard a lot of endgame players talking about wanting to trade in their Luocha and stuff like that now. Okay, and finally, let's talk about effect resistance, debuff cleansing, and debuff resistance. Totally not because I forgot about it or anything. Anyway, this is a big deal for sustains because there are a lot of hard crowd control that can basically end runs on the spot. Luocha has a really good single target one that he can use every time his automatic skill activates or if you manually skill with him. It's a single target cleanse. Huohuo is probably the best at this because she has so many chances to cleanse just in her talent itself. It is crazy. But I want to mainly focus on Fu Xuan and Aventurine in this scenario. Fu Xuan has this interesting thing where every time your matrix is up, it negates one instance of crowd control, which means if this is an AoE attack, if this is a crowd control that's supposed to affect all your units, she just makes it void. However, after that, then yes, your team is susceptible to crowd controls. This is really nice, for example, for Jingwen teams where you basically want it to be guaranteed that he doesn't get crowd controlled, and so his Lightning Lord can go and attack the enemies. So all these units have some sort of way to resist crowd control. What is Aventurine's? It says in one of his skill descriptions that he gives your characters effect resistance. Okay, and we don't know the exact number this will be, but if it's something like 50%, it'll be a really good way to minimize, not guarantee, but minimize the chances of your team getting crowd controlled. At lower level of enemies, this is basically 100% resist, because they have lower effect hit rate, but like the higher the level of the enemy go, the higher the effect hit rate of the enemy will be. But if you think about it, if you run the broken kill set, that's automatically another 10%, so that's 60% effect resistance already. And if you just build a bit more effect resistance, you might even be able to get to 100% effect resistance on your supports. I mean, right now, some of my supports already have like 50% effect resistance just from their relics alone. Think about a team where your supports, not your carry still wants to build damage, but think about a team where your supports all have 100% effect resistance. Aventurine can have really easy 100% effect resistance because all he needs to do is build 50% on himself. So think about that. Once again, we don't know the full numbers, but just saying this is a really interesting way to minimize the chances of you being crowd controlled, not guarantee it. The thing that's nice about Xuan is that you can kind of control a time where you're guaranteed to not be crowd controlled every time you refresh her matrix of prescience. With Aventurine, it's more of a consistent thing. I think it will provide a lot of value. At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong pull, just what you think is best for your account. And hopefully this video has provided you with all the information you need in regards to these characters. I didn't really talk about Huohuo too much, but she's just as good. She's the best in DOT teams, like I said earlier. I mainly brought up these 3 units because Luocha is the current banner, Aventurine is the next banner, and Xuan is another preservation unit that people might be curious to whether pull for her or Aventurine. Also go read the comments of this video, maybe type your own. I'm sure people will let all of you guys know if I said anything wrong or I missed anything. So do read that. If you want to catch me live or ask me questions live, I'm doing some account reviews now as well. Go catch me on the Twitch stream. I appreciate you all. Much love. Thanks for watching. I'm going to go think about what I did with the whole Nut Nation thing now. Bye.